Good morning, everyone. I always get one person that says good morning. Welcome. I'm glad that everyone is here. Um, this is a very important issue that we're going to be taking a look at this morning, and that's why we call it a special meeting for sure. And what's on our agenda for today is one thing, the Children's Services Levy and the options that we as a board may want to take for the November election. So I'm going to open it up. Jeff, our administrator, is going to start, and then I think Lisa will come up from TLRC and say a few words first. Jeff?
Thanks, commissioners. There is no presentation this morning. I think the commissioners have had their fill of PowerPoints on this issue, but just as a way of synopsis for folks who may be watching at home, over the past several months, the county has undergone an intensive process to assess the needs of children's services in the Hamilton County community so that the board, as Commissioner Summer Dumas said, can decide upon a property tax levy to certify to the ballot for November. The board has done a tremendous amount of work over this time, a tremendous amount of due diligence, has asked numerous questions, assessed various options. In total, I believe at its height, we had 15 options before the board, looking at various impacts of those and implications of those. So in front of you today, in addition to what would amount to a flat current levy millage, are 6 additional options. And I'm going to have Lisa Webb, Assistant Administrator, walk through these so that on the board's agenda, you can very clearly see which option comports with the percentage increase. And the percentage increase, I think, has been how the commissioners have gone about stratifying these in their minds. So Lisa, can you walk through that, please?
Absolutely. Commissioners, you have 7 items on your agenda. They are the highest levy under consideration for this to a flat levy at the bottom, item number 7. I will start with item number 1 and just roll through those with the millage amount and the percentage amount for you. The first item is the TLRC recommendation. It is for 6.57 mils. That is a 71% increase from the current levy. Item number 2 is 6.23 mils. That is a 59% increase. Item number 3 is 5.92 mils, and that is a 49% increase. Item number 4 is a 5.61 mils levy. It is a 38% increase. Item number 5 is a 5.06 mils levy, and that is a 19% increase. Item number 6 is a 4.78 mil levy. That is a 10% increase. And as I mentioned at the top, item number 7 is a flat renewal of the 4.51 mil current levy. That is a 0% increase there.
Thank you, Lisa. So just to wrap up, commissioners, these past several months, I want to thank the board for your attention to this issue. The board has really dug in on this and done a lot of really good work, especially around trying to find a middle ground between something that will both keep children safe and also do so at the least possible cost to the taxpayer. I will note, before I turn it back to the commission on this, that many of the options before the board today also require some level of subsidy from the county. In some cases, subsidy is pretty significant, and we're talking tens of millions of dollars over the levy cycle. So I would just say that this is the first time in my history being here that we've seen the board be willing to consider that type of a move in order to keep children safe, keep our most vulnerable safe, but at the same time recognizing the times we're in and trying to keep things as cost effective for the taxpayer as possible. So all those are among the options before you today, commissioners. With that, Madam President, I will turn it back to you for the rest of the agenda.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Lisa. The way I'd like to proceed is to look at the option that you're interested in and then present on those. We're not going to go through all 7 of those, of course. So I'm going to, and any comments that you may have. Vice President Reese.
Thank you very much. I want to be absolutely clear that we have to fund our children. I am very supportive of that. I'm going to say it 3 times because they say in media you got to say it 3 times for people to understand it. I have been and always have been supportive of our children. Say it one more time. I've always been supportive of our children. Item number 2, I have always been supportive of the homeowners. You've all heard me many times not happy about the state of Ohio raising these property taxes and putting it in the local government's hands. When I was at the State House, I called it trickle-down taxation, where they cut taxes at the state level and trickle it down to the local level to raise taxes. I have always been a fighter for the homeowners regarding lower property taxes. I'll say it one more time. I've always been a fighter for the homeowners for lower property taxes. In fact, I've said it time and time again, the days of how we've been doing it for 20 and 30 years eventually will come to an end. We will not be able to fund everything on the backs of the homeowners. We've got to find a new model, a new sustainable model. The third thing that's very important, I've been very consistent, the number one issue right now in Hamilton County and America is affordability. Affordability, that's what I'm hearing from the citizens. I was just at church yesterday and 3 people came up to me separately and said, Reese, we just can't afford it. Gas is up to $4 a gallon. Groceries, I was at the grocery store and a lady had to put her meat back, 2 things of chicken, because she just couldn't afford it. Gas and electric, Duke Energy, nobody wants to talk about it. I've asked the governor to step in. Everybody wants to be quiet, but 30% increase is going to kill people. A 30% increase on your gas and electric. Property taxes, the last time, it's a packed house here, but I remember it was a packed house of homeowners ticked off about their property taxes with the reassessment. And the state told them to come down here, and we told them to go up 71, and there are people who really have lost their homes behind it. At the same time, everything's going up. I was at the doctor, and the guy came out and said, man, my copay, I can't afford this. There's a lady I know, senior citizen, hurt her toe and needed to go to the hospital, went to the hospital, and they said, your insurance now need a $125 copay. She said she left the hospital with a toe that was black. It's tough. Everything's going up. And we don't know what Cincinnati Public Schools is going to do. They had an income tax. They might rescind it, might put it on a property tax. So affordability is my number one concern, that we don't price people out of Hamilton County. With that being said, I said, let's look at some different alternatives. TLRC, and we love and thank them for their volunteerism, but they came back with a 72% increase recommendation. There's no way in the world grandma, grandpa, everyday working people can afford 72% in this economy. Everything we do is based on the timing of what's happening right now. Hamilton County has been great over the years to have funded a lot of these social services, and we have to appreciate and thank them. But I'm running into too many that says, how can I do both? And that's what I have been looking for. The question is, how did we get here? I'm just going to give you 1 year ago, August the 1st, in these same chambers, we were wrestling with a bingo deal. It was approved. I didn't vote for it, but it was approved on August 1st of last year. Now, you mean to tell me we just found out that Children's Services was in trouble? That should have all been laid on the table in advance. We should not have been in here last year this time wrestling with a Bengal deal and knowing that the children, we didn't know as a board, but knowing the children was at risk. How could we in good conscience have been even recommended? Nothing should have been recommended to this board about the Bengals. We should have said, hold up, time out. We love the Bengals, but let's hold up for a minute. Our children are getting ready to come up, and they're getting ready to be in a massive deficit. I don't remember in these chambers last year, I remember the time, and I went and got the newspaper because I wanted to make sure I had it right. August 1st, Bengals, oh, we got it, and we got a deal, and we outside. How in the world could that have been recommended to us, knowing that these children were right around the corner, getting ready to be in a deficit? A few months after that deal, it was the end of December, we got a $30 million deficit for children's service. How could you do that? How? So that's what I'm really upset about today, because we sent the wrong message. Children got to be in here begging to go to the ballot box, and the Bengals and the other stadiums never had to go to the ballot box. I told them to go to the ballot box. It was not recommended to go to the ballot box. Knowing, somebody knew, knowing that these children were about to be at risk. I don't know how we would do that. 1 year later, we're back here now with the kids have to go to the ballot box, but 1 year ago, the Bengals never had to. We're sending the wrong message. So, and this is not being, rude. We're looking at money. Bengals just came out. I didn't write the story. Bengals received more than $450 million of NFL national revenue last year. But the kids is in here. If you don't do this, we can't do the kids. Why did we do this last year knowing the kids was in trouble? Then we look at, well, what's their value? $5.25 billion. So what message are we sending? And now grandma got to halfway lose her house trying to save the kids, and we were here 1 year ago. 1 year ago in 2 days? Approving a Bengal deal? $5.2 billion? They didn't need our money. $450 million in revenue? And you want all the homeowners to roll their sleeves up, but the billionaires don't have to roll theirs up. So my goal was to let me bring something different. Let's bring something different. So I brought in an idea of how do we switch it where the stadiums would go to the ballot and the children would be more sustainable. So today we have on here, I said do 10% on a homeowner, 10%. That's still going to be tough for some people. Some people don't have $50 extra in the bank. Let's do 10% and then subsidize it. Don't subsidize it by cutting the sheriffs and cutting safety, and because we got to do a budget, and that's what they'll do. We'll come in, not us, but they'll come in and recommend prosecutor's office got to be cut and the sheriff's got to be cut. No. Let's cut the billionaires. Now, legally, they said, oh, you can't do it, but the word primarily, I've had 3 attorneys who said the word primarily, meaning most of the money will still go to the stadiums. But then but take a portion to help subsidize the children's levy. And that's what I am proposing. Now, in the memo, Mr. Ludo sent us a memo and said this will kill the property tax rollback. But let's be real about the property tax rollback. Every year I got to fight for it. The voters were told they would get 30%. They told this in 1997 or whatever. They said, we can't keep that commitment because we didn't get it in writing. Last year, all we did was 4.5%. But in the memo, it has 30%. I had to fight like hell to get 30%. And my colleagues twice went along with it. But last year, it was only 4.5%. And now you're suggesting you can't give them 30% rebate, but you can go up to 72%, 30, 40, 50%. You can go up on them, but you can't come down on them. So we got to be clear on that. And then last week, we just did $600 million in bonds to get started with the Bengals. At the same time, on the same calendar that we're saying we need to get the homeowners to bail out our children. So item number 6 that I'm proposing, and I do appreciate it got on the ballot. It wasn't on the ballot, wasn't on the option before, but I do want to thank my colleagues for allowing it to be on here. It wasn't on here. It wasn't considered. And I believe that where we're going to get the money from should be identified, and I want to be clear that we have an opportunity to get it from the stadium sales tax. I want to explain to everybody, there is no such thing as a stadium in a pocket. What you passed was a sales tax increase. And it was former commissioners that said, put that increase in this one bucket, It does not legally have to be in just that one bucket. And I really think that when we're in this type of crisis, we have to be creative. Now, I still have questions, and I'm glad we had some people look into it, but I still got questions. How did we go from $100 million in reserve, and 1 year later, $30 million in a deficit? We have to make sure that that never, ever happens again. Cost is going up, it's going to keep going up. But we've got to draw the line. So, because the people just can't keep going up. So I'm happy that it is on the table, and with new leadership, they will be looking at that particular option. With that being said, I'd like to put a motion. Oh, is that what you want to do?
No,
You want to wait for the motion?
Yes, I'd
okay.
like to, yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, my point is, when we get the opportunity, I hope that item number 6 is what I'm pushing, which is the 10% increase on the homeowner, which is the lowest besides flat, and then we'll be able to make it up with some of the stadium sales tax and maybe some other things as well. Mm-hmm. So that is what I am presenting. I think it's based on the economy currently, based on the stadium revenues that's done come in. Everybody should pull up their sleeves and be all hands on deck for our children. I want the children to be funded in a sustainable way, and then which is a necessity, and then have the stadiums, which I love sports, those are luxuries, and let those go to the voters, and they can make a decision on what luxuries they'd like to have. So that is my point. And I appreciate item number 6 being on the agenda, and when it's appropriate time, I'd like to present it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Driehaus.
Thank you. I want to first, out of the gate, thank the TLRC. Some of the members are with us this morning. This has been a very challenging exercise for the TLRC, the Tax Levy Review Commission, to take a look at this levy and try to offer a recommendation to the board that takes into account the needs of kids in our community, and they did just that. And I am very grateful for that recommendation. I am not recommending that we go with it for other reasons, and I'll get into, but I do want to thank them for their work, and also thank the administration. A lot of work has been done here, both publicly and behind the scenes, to help us all get the information we need to make a good decision. So I want to thank the administration, really so many people, particularly Jeff Aludo, for all the information that you have provided to help us make an educated decision. I also want to thank the community members. We had 3 public hearings, and the TLRC had 2. So we heard from a lot of folks from the public. Over 60 people came to those hearings. We heard from foster parents. We heard from kids that are benefiting from the services of JFS. We heard from taxpayers. We heard from the providers that are doing the direct services on the ground. Thank you all for weighing into the conversation. The only way we make a good decision is when you all weigh in. And so I am very, very grateful for that. So as I've said in the past, this is one of the most important decisions I'm going to make as a county commissioner in general, particularly this year. And it's one of the most important issues we have in front of us this year. Keeping kids safe in this community, we have seen recent cases in other communities where we have had kids in desperate situations, and we try every day not to have that happen here in Hamilton County. And I'm very proud of the work of the Children's Services Levy and the folks over at JFS who are doing this work every single day. It's really something. So keeping kids safe in Hamilton County is not only a critical legal obligation that we have. From my vantage point, it is a moral obligation of this community. It speaks to who we are as a community when you talk about keeping kids safe and how we fund those services. So we're asking the voters to decide. There will be something on the ballot in November. The levy is expiring. It's a 5-year levy. And so there will be something, and we've always known there will be something on the ballot. And we're going to ask the voters to support our kids and support the Children's Services Levy. The question is, what is the amount? What is the amount we're going to put in front of the voters that provides for the needed resources for children's services while keeping the increase as low as we can go for the taxpayers? So we're facing increased costs of care for kids. That is why we're in the situation we're in. We've seen graph after graph, presentation after presentation about why we have an increase in cost in children's services. It's the cost of care. It's the cost of care. It is kinship care, it is foster care, it's these placements that we need to do for these kids. The kids that are coming into our care have different needs now than they did 10 years ago. The needs are acute. The trauma is dramatic. The need for the increased care is part of that equation, and it is more expensive to provide that type of care because some of these kids can't be in a foster setting. They can't be in a kinship care setting. They have to go to a more regulated setting with experts to help them with the trauma that they have suffered. And so that is why we've got an increase in cost related to the needs of the kids in our community. So the TLRC recommended about a 75% increase, and they did quite a bit of research. They had consultants weighing in. It's a recommendation that acknowledges that if this levy were to fail, we don't go back to where we were. We go down to zero. So that's the stressor, right? That's the challenge here. And these are mandated services. We don't have options to not do these things, nor would I suggest we not do these things under any circumstance. But the fact of the matter is, these are mandated services from the federal and state governments. So those services need to be provided, whether they're from the levy or some other source, primarily the general fund. And so what I have suggested in the past, and I've gone round and round with what is the right level of increase, what can people afford, and what stabilizes this levy for the kids in this community. And so I am recommending item number 4. It is a 38% increase. It's about half of what the TLRC recommended to us. It's about $39 for a homeowner that has a $100,000 home every year. That's the measure we always use. But we have to recognize that the need remains for what was recommended to us. So that 38% is lower than the recommendation. The recommendation took into account all the needs. And so we have a gap, right? And we've been talking about how we close the gap and what are those strategies to make sure that we're going as low as we can go for taxpayers, but still covering the need. So for the first time in my experience in the 9 years I've been here, we're looking at other resources outside of the levy to cover some of these costs. And there have been a number of different options in front of us, and we will continue to have that conversation as we move into the budget. How are we going to fund the gap? We've already done $36 million in cuts to the Children's Services Levy. That happened in the last budget cycle. We have in front of us many strategies. There are, I believe, nine strategies to cut cost. And so they are broad. They vary from the amount that we would save, but we're always looking at these strategies. We need to double down on these strategies to balance the budget. And also, we have a new director coming in. This director is a problem solver. He's from Delaware County. His name is Bob Anderson. We've all interviewed him. We've all approved of his hiring. This guy already has ideas about how to cut costs in the Children's Services Fund. And so this gap that we're talking about exists, but we need to continue to think through these strategies to lower the cost and lower the gap. We also need a more holistic approach to our levies. We've got 7 levies under the authority of the board, but we all interface with one another, with the city, with the school board, and so we need to have a broader community conversation about these levies. I look forward to that. I think now is the time. And I've talked to both the school board members and members of city council and the mayor to talk about that strategy and how we start to move forward in a more collective way. We also all have the pressures, and we've all talked about this, from the state and the federal government. They keep sending these unfunded mandates our way, and we keep struggling to come up with the amount to cover the cost because they keep reducing our resources. It is not a good combination, and so it pushes all the pressure and obligations down to the locals. This is why we have these levies to begin with, because they've pushed so much of the responsibility financially to the locals, because they are not taking responsibility at the state level. We are second last in this country in funding children's services in the state of Ohio. Second last. That's not helpful. And that is why we have such pressure on these levies. So we have done and will continue to do what we can to keep costs as low as possible in a climate of increased need. We will also continue to recognize the strain on property taxpayers and only ask for the amount that provides the stability while filling the gap with other sources and continuing to reduce costs. This vote today recognizes all of the challenges and creates the necessary balance between caring for our kids and going as low as we can for taxpayers. So I'm grateful to all of those who helped and participated in this conversation to help inform the decision and work to identify new and different funding sources so that we can recommend this reduced increase. And so, Madam President, when it's appropriate, I too would like to make a motion related to our vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few comments to make. And before I make my comments as it relates to the children's levy, I did receive something just this morning about our caseworkers and what they do. So this is good news. I wanted to recognize and support the caseworkers and the staff who support our children incredibly, the difficult work that they have to do. Case in point, this past Friday, Children's Services had an extraordinarily busy day, taking custody of 14 children who needed a safe place to stay. The Children's Services team handled the removal of all 14 children with staff with multiple sections, stepping in to help with everything that they could. And of course, we don't want to remove unless we have to remove, and we've said that as a board. And here's the result that really matters. All 14 children were safely placed in homes by the end of the night. Not one child had to sleep in the office. It took a tremendous team effort to make that happen. 2 case workers secured placements for all children, including 10 teens, within hours. Staff supervised children on site and transported 1 to Children's Hospital. 5 caseworkers worked late into the night to finalize placements, with the last placement completed around 10 p.m. And then 2 caseworkers stayed at the hospital. 2 more assisted with removals in the field, and 2 more supervised children and supported placement efforts. And 1 supervisor returned later that evening to help supervise our children. So this is just one example of what our caseworkers do on a daily basis. It may not be 14, but I want to thank them for all the work that they do and continue to do. I want to speak to the comment that was made about the $100 million that we had, and then it kind of disappeared. Well, I made it my effort when the year started to start counting up how much money we were allocating for our children to receive different services. Not that we spent, but as of August the 1st, we have $106 million allocated. Not that we'll spend it all, but that just gives you an example of how much these services cost to take care of our children. First and foremost, I want to thank our public for weighing in at the public hearings, administration, the auditor, our business community, nonprofits, and last but not least, TLRC. The TLRC committee worked out a very reasonable recommendation, even though that 79% didn't feel too good for me, but they looked at what we needed, and we probably do need that much. My job was to review almost 15 options to determine what was best for the children, taxpayers, and the community as a whole. This is a dilemma, but I've experienced this many times while I've been on this board for 8 years, that I've been somewhat in the middle on decision-making as it relates to the deciding vote. I am a social worker, I say that all the time, proud of it, 50 years as a social worker, and I have a code of ethics, and I can't violate that. And so I have to look at this situation along with other situations. What would I do not only as a politician, well, a servant to the public, but also as a social worker? I want to make it clear that I don't like any one of the options, any of the 7, any of the 15. And the reason why I say that is because I do not want to take more money from the property owners. I don't want to do that. I also do not want to take money out of our reserve or out of the Hamilton County budget that we use for all of you. So I really don't like any of them. I want to, God forbid, there's another emergency like we had in 2020 in this county, because we're taking money from different places. So I'm putting out a clarion call to the state of Ohio to help with these quality of life issues. Last time I checked, the state of Ohio had $3.94 billion in the rainy day fund, but they keep asking us to fund these mandated services. And that balance is the highest ever in the state of Ohio, $3.94 billion. The bottom line is, as I said, I don't agree with either option, but I also know it'll be a tragedy if we don't pass a levy for these children. My recommendation provided, the option presented by TLRC, as I said earlier, was too high. I appreciate their work, and well, I won't say it was too high. What I will say, it met the needs and the services of what we needed to provide, but we cannot take that much money out of our residents' hands. Definitely need to have an increase in the levy. It won't fit our needs if we don't. And lastly now, our residents may have to make a decision about the children's school levy. Whoever thought of that you have to make a decision, which group of children do you want to support? It's terrible that we have to possibly make that decision. This should never happen. And I also want to clarify the Bengals lease and the children's levy, and that, just read up on your information. It doesn't correlate at all. We're making people think that if we didn't pass the Bengals lease, that we would have money for the children. That's my opinion. From my research, it has nothing to do, it's like apples and oranges. But the last thing I want to say, that as a board, if we do not show a unified front and let the people know what we can do and what we can't do, this levy will never pass, because they're confused. I would be confused if I wasn't up here. I've done my research. But it's like, well, they'll find money somewhere else. They can do something somewhere else. And I just suggest that maybe next year the board look at what they might want to do differently. This levy now we need to pass. There's no time to wait. And so don't be confused. If you need more clarity, just read up, research, call me. But this is a levy that the children need. So at this time, I'd like to go to Vice President Reese, if you'd like to make a motion.
Yes. Before I make the motion, I do want to indicate that the final vote will be from the voters of Hamilton County. What we're doing today, though, we don't get to put I would love to put these options on the ballot and let the voters just decide which option, but they won't get that option. They'll only get one decision. I do want to say, we've done a lot of research, and let me just say, there are opportunities within the sales tax to put toward this. And so my option that I am saying, and let me just say, none of this is, JFS done a good job, nonprofits done a good job. The people will have the final decision. This is not the final decision, but it decides what we think should go to the ballot. I believe that item number 6, with a 10% increase, I'm looking at something I think would pass, would be able to hopefully pass. And item number 6 is a 10% increase. I don't want any increase, but a 10% increase. And I think with the mix of some of the stadium sales tax, a portion there, and some other portions, we would be able to have a balance to help fund the children. I think all of us, obviously, today, we're here about funding the children. It's about how do we do it. And so this would be, to me, a balance where we could help fund the children, also support the homeowners, thinking about the seniors who own homes as well, and close the gap with the stadium tax. So I make a motion that item number 6 be put on the ballot.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, I'll go to Commissioner.
Madam President, I would just like to put it in the record, item number 6. Just for
It's in the record, I'm sure, yeah. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. And thank you for reminding us what we're doing today. The story that you just talked about, that all happened in one day. That happened on Friday. And so thank you for level setting our conversation about why we're here at all. And a big thank you, as you said, to the individuals that do this work every day to keep these kids safe. I am very grateful for that. So I wanted to make a motion to approve of item number 4. This is the item that recommends for the 38% increase. As has been said, I believe this strikes the balance between the needs of the kids in our community and the strains on our taxpayers. So I'd like to move item number 4.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
I'll abstain and let the voters decide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With no further business to come before the board, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese? Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.